How would you feel if you've just come back from a magical getaway? Look at the awesome photos that you've just taken and then find out they're blurry. What? The worst thing is, this could have been easily prevented. Oh, blurry. All that effort taking great photos only to miss out on reaping that reward by a margin of a hair. Sounds frustrating, right? This happened to me when I recently went on a hiking trip to a beautiful island far, far away. Okay, not that far, but still, it was a hassle to get to. So I'm gonna share my mistakes and my tips so you don't have to suffer the same consequences that I did. Let's get started. Now, there isn't a lot that you need to do to get sharp photos. Cameras nowadays, they're pretty good, to be honest. All the bells and whistles for you to take a clear, sharp image. I'm actually going to focus on things that you should avoid because they will actively hinder you getting a sharp image. I'll go through my mistakes and then some other ones so you can avoid them as much as possible. So, the first mistake that I made. When it comes to adjusting your exposure, there are tools that allow you to do this, right? ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, but each of these settings are not made equal and they can affect your photo in a big way. I've got two photos, they have the same exposure. They look very similar, but if you zoom in, one of them has way more noise than the other. So you've got to be mindful of the settings that you have and not expose the image incorrectly. And if you don't check your photos in camera, you might find some big surprises. And man, did I discover a big difference. My trusty companion, the ND filter. I pretty much have my ND filter stuck onto my lenses 24/7. Feels like I can use it for all kinds of situations. The filters actually degrade your image quality. And what I mean by that is it can introduce color casting, flaring, or ghosting. Just an example, you can see that the photo I've taken with and without an ND is just slightly different in terms of color, though this does depend on the quality of your filter. And hearing all this, you may be thinking, oh, I shouldn't really use a filter anymore, but it really depends, and it just means you have to consider the trade-offs of using a filter and without using a filter, and whether you think that balance is worth the trade-off basically. So if you're worried about exposing your lens, your glass is actually pretty durable and it's not gonna scratch that easily, to be honest. And even if it does, touch wood, you won't see it on the photo anyway. So I have a confession. I used to stack my filters. ND filter, UV filter, lens. Oh, I haven't actually used a lens hood since taking it out the box. I've always figured, hey, why do I need this lens hood? I've got an ND filter. That'll work, right? Let's get rid of this clunky piece of plastic. Garbage day! Can't even put it on anyway because I have my ND filter on, right? So it's fine. Bad decision. Turns out lens hoods can actually be very useful. Who would have thought? When you have harsh sunlight or you're shooting directly towards the sun, you can very easily get glaring, ghosting, those kind of issues. So having a lens hood would actually help you quite a lot. So from now on, this is something that I'm going to put in my bag all the time. In some cases, if you want to use both, depending on your brands, you can. For my case, I can only use one or the other. And lastly, shooting on the widest aperture, or more accurately, always shooting on the widest aperture. There are situations where using a wide aperture makes sense and sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And usually it comes down to what you want to focus on the photo. Whether you're focusing on the person and you want a creamy background, or you want to focus on the environment as well as the person and you might just narrow down your aperture. But in other situations, you actually might want to crank down your aperture so that you can get a clearer image. For example, if I wanted to get a sharp image on my 85mm, then I would crank it up to f4 or maybe f8. That's probably the sharpest it will ever get. And this really does depend on the type of lens you have, and every lens is different. So you got to experiment and see which f-stop is the sharpest for your lens. And there we have it. Things that you should avoid to get sharper photos. Even though I didn't get the photos that I wanted from my trip, I did get something else. Hard lessons. Anyway, if you like the video, like and subscribe and comment down below what you want to see next. Until next time, bye!